late. It's 8 o'clock in the evening. It's pitch dark. We will still have bright lights
Yeah, perfect. Nice. Good for you. Good for you.
in the garden. Yes, I like that.
Yeah. So I want to start this
Hmm.
with you introducing yourself
Okay.
to the world because you're not present on social media very much. So
I'm not.
people can't go like, oh, sensor integration. There is everything about
Yes,
else.
exactly. Yep, it should be. Yeah.
Tell us more.
I'm going to hire a professional to help me with that because I'm really not good with social media. And that's how you should get the word out, you know.
But it takes time. It's very time consuming.
It does, but yeah, and it's very time consuming. And it's not something I like to do, making videos and posting, and I'm not good at it. And anyway, so who is me? Who is else Vidts? Um, I started my study started with physiotherapy, human physiotherapy. After that, I studied manual therapy. After that, I studied osteopathy, all in the humane domain. Um, and then I took a sabbatical of 4 years. And during those 4 years, we traveled, me and my then partner, we traveled around mostly Europe with a motorhome. And when I came back, I started to study dog behavior. And I went to study with Dogz, and I found it all very fascinating. And it so changed the way that I interacted with my dog. And it changed my quality of life because of how my relationship changed. It had an important impact on the quality of my life with my dog, or how I experienced it, and how the richness of understanding dogs, right? It enriched my life so much. And so I thought, okay, what I've learned so far from dogs and about dogs is not something I want to keep for me,
Mm.
because it has given me so much. I want to also give this to people, that they can feel enriched by how much their dogs and dogs in general can teach you, can communicate with you, it can enrich your life so much. So I shouldn't keep this for myself. This is why I started the doing that education with Dogz. I thought, nah, I like dogs, and this is something that I'm going to do for me. Well, that took a different turn. And then at the end of the course with Dogz, I had made my end project was about how a color can have an impact on the dog's anatomical features in the neck. And
Their
Turit
coat
was,
color,
sorry,
the coat color, or
sorry, the,
oh, collar, a neck collar. Thank
yeah,
you. I'm so glad I asked.
yes, good you ask. My pronunciation might not always be pitch perfect, so please do
Same
ask.
here. So we're going to clarify a lot. Yes.
Good. Um, and Turit was quite charmed with that, and she immediately asked me on her international seminar in Norway, Oslo, and that's how things got started rolling, and how I was asked on different seminars, a bit all over the place, and how I got to explore what I could do for dogs and for people. For me, it's very important to do as much for people as for dogs. Um, the person is as important as the dog for me. Or even, and this might seem a bit odd, the person might be more important to me than the dog. because it's the person that is going to make, it's the dog owner that is going to make a difference for the dog's life. And I need to make a difference for that person so that that person understands how and what he or she can do to change the life of the dog if the dog is not comfortable, if there are behavioral issues. So I
What a
find,
great concept. Yes.
yes, yeah, I do believe that people are important.
I know. And the dog's welfare is really
Exactly.
dependent on the welfare of the human.
Absolutely. Only comes through that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, that's how I got to travel around and speak about dogs, speak about some dog anatomy, and then how everything developed. And as I'm still working as a physio, I work with elderly people. And one day we got a course on sensory integration for elderly people. And I had some, I knew a little bit about sensory integration from my physio education, but really not much. That because sensory integration is in Belgium mostly in the domain of occupational therapists, not so
Yes.
much, yeah, not so much in the domain of physiotherapists. But anyway, we got this course because um, they wanted to explain how sensory integration, sensory perception changes in an elderly person. And I thought that was so interesting and also so basic. How more basic can you go in terms of how do individuals experience their surroundings, their life? It all comes through the senses. It's like the binary information of a computer. I sort of compare it with binary information. It's so basic. If you want to understand how an individual, be it a dog, be it another person, how an individual experiences, sees, hears, smells his life around him, you need to go down to the sensory information that is present, but look at how. How do you perceive it? How do you perceive it? How do I perceive it? It's different from person to person, from individual to individual. And that is just so fascinating.
Yes. Isn't that almost like that sensory component creates our personality?
Oh, it definitely creates it because it creates how we see the world
Yeah.
and how we experience the world. That is what creates us, right? So, so that's how I started thinking, and I really was curious what could this sensory integration be like for dogs? What would it be if we would do exercises that would be aimed at changing the sensory perception, the sensory reception, because it's not just about how you perceive it, it's how it comes to you and how it gets filtered before it is even perceived. What would exercises look like if for dogs, if we would, try to find out what sensory integration would be like for dogs? And then back then I had two dogs of my own, so I just started experimenting with them. And it's true. Thankfully, there was my dog Marty, my Labrador, who later I understood had actually quite some issues with sensory modulation because Lisa, my Australian cattle dog, she could just do all these exercises and she would ace them immediately. And if I would have only had her, I would have thought nothing about those exercises, right? Because, well, clearly they're very simple. They don't bring any gain. So I would have dropped it. Luckily, there was Marty who gave me a lot of difficulties throughout life managing his sensory difficulties, which I then gradually got to understand better and better. But it's thanks to him that I got to develop this. And because I saw the advantages for him, I was brave enough or sure enough that I should try it with other dogs and with client dogs as well. So I started experimenting with other dogs. What it did for Marty, I usually give that example. The first time that I realized this sensory integration, these exercises could be like really changers for dogs in terms of how they can change their behavior.
Yeah, we want to know.
Marty, I lived right next to a stream. Marty, being a working Labrador, he loved to go swimming, which is perfectly fine. I mean, as much as he can enjoy himself, of course, he can go swimming. But especially when it's colder outside, I want to get him home and towel him dry, obviously. And that would be such a frustrating thing to try and do with Marty, because Marty could not stand still. He would be jumping on me, over me, on the furniture, rubbing against the furniture. Everything would be wet. I would be wet. All the furniture would be wet, and Marty would also still be wet. One day I got the idea. I had already been trying exercises outside on a beam that I had lying in the garden, and it had been really difficult for him to stay on the beam, stay on that beam, while in the garden he could see the road, he could see a path behind the garden where other dogs or other people could pass occasionally. So it was for him already a very difficult exercise to be on that beam and be aware of his place in that space. That's what we worked on. So one day we got home from our walk. Of course, he had been swimming, and I thought, why don't I place him on the beam? And he stood on the beam, and I could towel him off, and he didn't move. Whereas before, he would be bouncing and bouncing and bouncing up and down, and it would be really struggle to get a towel on him. He would just stand still, and he would be looking around, and I would even go like, really? Really? You're standing really?
What
So,
happened to
so
you,
like,
Marty?
really? You don't even need to jump, and I can actually push you a bit harder so that you might lose your balance on the beam. And you're like, yeah, no, I'm just standing here. I was
That
so,
is so interesting. Tell us, what
but
do you think happened there?
the most interesting thing was a bit later, another day, I come home from a walk. He had been swimming, but it's raining outside. I can't towel him off in the garden when it's raining outside. So we go, oh, okay, here we go again. We need to towel him off inside the house. He stood perfectly still.
What
This,
happened? Tell us what happened.
a lot of possibilities. Either has he learned from just that one exercise of standing on the beam and toweling it off on a beam? Can he now also understand that he can stand still inside the house? Has it been some counter conditioning? A lot of possibilities. I mean, this is just one dog. This is just one example.
Sure.
No huge conclusions at all from just that one thing. But I had been trying a lot to counter condition him to the towel, counter conditioning to how it feels on your body. I had been trying a lot of counter conditioning. Of course, I did fail. It never worked. So this could have been the one breakthrough, and it could have still have been counter conditioning. But, and even if it is counter conditioning, it's definitely also more than that. It's
Yeah.
more than
Sounds like
that.
sensory counter conditioning.
Yes, because you could call it that way. what happened on that beam is Marty was always all over the place. You have these dogs, right, that when you see them act, like there's an impulse coming and there's an immediate reaction, and there's another impulse and an immediate reaction. Marty was a dog that would lose himself in the world of olfaction, in the world of scent. When we would be on a walk, he could not actually sniff because there is one scent coming to him and he responds to it. But as he moves on, there's a next scent coming to him and he flies in that direction. Then there's another scent coming and he's flying in that direction. So he was like a victim of olfaction. He was constantly being overwhelmed. He was like a puppet on a string, and the strings were actually different odors, which just had control over his body. So, and
Not an easy dog.
not easy and
Not
quite
an easy
painful
dog.
on your shoulders to walk a dog on a leash like that.
Yeah. I think a
Yeah.
lot of listeners could actually identify with that.
Oh, I definitely have plenty of clients who have that similar problem. Yes. And
Hmm.
olfaction is particularly a difficult one. And from all the sensory channels, olfaction is one that is least filtered. And
For the
also good
dog,
when you, and for humans. And
for
when
everybody.
you, because it does not go, the information does not go through the thalamus. But um, but thinking of the world of olfaction compared to the visual world, when you are walking in whatever type of environment, when you take 5 steps, most likely your visual environment is still pretty much the same, right? But for dogs, when they take 5 steps, their olfactory world could be completely
Mm.
different.
Like riding in a train,
Like riding in
everything
a
changing
train
so fast, right?
for a visual environment. But then by riding in a train, you still have the train as constant visual reference, right? But in the world of olfaction, it can be completely different within
Oh
a
my
few
goodness.
steps. So you have no reference, and these odors are constantly coming to you. And if you don't have good modulation, good filtering, which you need to practice, then dogs are constantly just responding, not by choice, but because the odors are pulling the strings. Okay. What I want for those dogs is that, first of all, they're able to be here, be right here in their own body, right? Because if these external sensory experiences are constantly grabbing hold of you and dictating what you do, your experience is constantly outward. The next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. What I want to try and do is get their experience to be, this is where you are. Because throughout all of our life, this, our own place, is our constant reference. Wherever you go, you always have your body with you.
Yes, we do.
So if this could be our reference, it's a bit similar like riding on a train. The landscape is constantly changing, but the train is always there because you're sitting right in it, right? So there's still a way to structure your visual environment. The reference is I'm sitting in a train. But the way to structure the olfactory environment for dogs that get lost in olfactory sensations is, this is your body. Here is who you are. You are right here. So how did I do that with Mati? By putting him on a beam high enough. So, and high enough, I should This was about 50 centimeters. So that was high enough for him to realize I'm on top of something. I had a beam that was lying flat on the ground, and that must have been like maybe 20 to 30 centimeters high. That was not
Mhm.
high enough for Marty. He would not realize when he would stand up,
Oh.
on or off. So I had it higher up so he could visually see that there was a difference in height.
So
So
half a
I
meter, 50 centimeters is about 25 inches, probably,
must be something like that.
somewhere there.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
for
pretty high.
it is pretty high. If you have a dog that does not have good balance, that's not where I would put them.
Right.
Marty did not have perfect balance because he would not focus on his body. To have good balance, you need to focus on your own body, right? Or you just go really fast. If you need to walk on something that is quite narrow and you're not sure whether you can keep your balance, you want to go fast, right? Because the speed will help you keep your movement.
Yes.
And that's what he was actually constantly doing. He was constantly shooting really fast from one direction to the other. So get him on the beam, get him to move slowly or stand still, and let him feel the edges of the beam. So I'm using visual information. He can see that he's higher up. I'm using tactile information because the beam is narrow enough and not too narrow, but narrow enough so that he, with his toes, he can actually feel the edges of it. And as he will go through the exercises, he will start to learn that this tactile information is a really good reference. Because as I
Mhm.
would have him go through more difficult exercises, whenever the exercise would get harder, you would see him actually reach for finding the edge so that it becomes his reference. Now that's really good. I love to see that when dogs do that because it means that they are aware of their place, they are aware of their body, the information that they can reach out by feeling where their body is touching the rim of the beam.
Right.
It's so much when you think about everything that is necessary to do this simple exercise. It's so much that actually happens compared to not knowing what you do and only having a reaction, an automatic reaction, a pull on a string when there's a sensory information hitting your brain, right?
Yeah.
It's so different. And so that's how I gradually got him to be much more aware of where his body is, of making a reference to his body. When he would be on the beam and he'd see something move, you would see him go like, oh, because of course he is already, this thing is pulling him in that direction. But now he's aware that, oh, balance, I'm losing my balance. Now, when you lose
And my
your
body's
balance,
right here.
this immediately brings a lot of attention to your own body because that is definitely something that you want to correct immediately.
Mhm.
Losing your balance, when we tend to lose our balance, we have a fear response because losing your balance is dangerous. And immediately all your attention is drawn to, I need to keep my balance. How do I do this? How do I correct my body so that I'm back in balance? So that type of information is also really very valuable information to draw a person, draw a dog, draw an individual back to being aware of, this is your place, this is where you are. Something is happening, but that is outside of you. Don't lose yourself in it. This is where you are, and those things are at that distance from you. And you can watch, and that's fine. But still, this is your reference. So
So you
that's
were
what's happened
using
to Marty.
vestibular and proprioceptive information, giving that to him so he could change his behavior, change his response, I should say.
Well, so that he could change his perception of him, internal world and external world, so that it doesn't remain that chaos of lots of information and no structure in it. Now there's a
Mhm.
structure of this is you, that is not you. That's the first thing. Because
Mm.
if everything is just information and you don't have any structure to or any reference to structure all the information and give it a meaningful whole or representation that is reflecting reality around you, that's really where we need to start. And that's what I did for Marty. So I brought him on the beam. We did exercises on the beam. He had the tactile information. He had the vestibular information of his balance. He had the visual information as well. And he had proprioceptive information as he was walking on it or falling off or standing next to it and getting on and feeling that difference and how he needed to move his body. And all of that brought him to to structure his sensory information, so that when I took him inside and I started toweling him off inside, this information was not chaos. First of all, it was known information because we had been doing it on the beam now. And on the beam, he had been able to do it in a calm way. So there, you can definitely say that that was counter conditioning, right? We had been able to do it in a different way. So he could have a different emotion around it. It would not arouse him, and he was able to remain calm with it. But as I got to experience with more and more dogs, I do find that making a difference in the sense of the chaos of all the sensory information, of everything that comes to you, of the external world and also the internal world, you're moving. Like for dogs who have hip dysplasia or any type of instability, a lot of information is coming from their body to their brain, information that says like, whoa, we're not in balance, we're wobbly here. That's a lot of information, and that information has a sort of alarm function as well. Watch out, this is dangerous, do something about it. But you can't because you have hip dysplasia, because you haven't developed your coordination, because you want to compensate with your front legs and you're not comfortable on your hind legs, so you don't have really good coordination happening. You're not very aware of your hind legs and how to place them because of not good coordination. You don't have that development of good body awareness. So for those dogs, the sensory information that comes from their body is also very chaotic in the sense
Mhm.
that they don't have good body awareness, so they don't have good reference of where to place a good structure to place the information that comes from their body in a reference frame. So it's just a bit of chaos, which really makes it difficult to then solve that issue of having part of the body that is not very stable, that has instability. And then we can do some
Mhm.
strengthening exercises and make sure that those muscles are stronger. But when that lacks good body awareness and good coordination, because of good integration of the sensory information that comes from that part of the body, then we're gonna have stronger muscles, because that's definitely possible to build stronger muscles without having good coordination, without having good body awareness, without having good sensory integration from the information that comes from that part of the body, integrating it into the bigger whole, which then builds to really good coordination. So I'm also integrating sensory integration exercises for dogs that have physical issues. Actually, I quite often do that. The advantage is that if I change how they perceive their body, if I change their neuromotor patterns, because how do we build neuromotor patterns? We build it because we get sensory information.
Mm-hmm.
How we move, see, whether I grab this or not depends on, first I have to see it, right? When I see it, I can grab it. When I reach my hand towards it, I'm constantly getting proprioceptive feedback about whether I'm reaching in the right direction and whether I'm holding it correctly. Now, this sounds super simple, and yeah, of course I know where to reach. But really, for people who have dyspraxia, that is not that simple. Some people who have had a stroke in the cerebellum or in some parts of the brain, they can reach like that. And they know exactly that they're reaching next to it. But still, because that feedback loop system is not working, they can't correct it while they are reaching out, and they only need to correct it when they see that, that didn't fail. I'm like 2 centimeters to the right of it, so I need to adapt towards the left. So that's what proprioception can do for us. It's a constant feedback loop. And so if for dogs that have instability issues, we look at it from this perspective. How does sensory information get processed in this brain? Then we can add that to also building stronger muscles. But then we build stronger muscles and we build a stronger brain. Because in osteopathy, we love to say that muscles are really the dumbest things in the body. The only thing they can do is contract, and they can only do it when they are told to do it. They don't even relax. They are not told to relax. They're just not told to contract anymore. So if we look at it from that perspective, we need to understand, okay, what tells them to contract? And how can we make sure that the right muscles contract at the right moment, at exactly coordinated with other muscles and to the correct intensity for really good stability and smooth movement? Well, that happens up here. And how neuromotor patterns are made, they are built on information.
Sensory information.
It's like software. For software to be built, you need input. You need to put information in the system. The information is sensory information. So when I look at dogs from a physical or a physio perspective, I look at what information does the brain need so that it can have different outcome in the body, that it can have different movement in the body.
Right, because the sensory input has to be there for the motor action to take place.
The sensory input needs to be there for the neuromotor pattern to be formed. The neuromotor pattern is built on the sensory information. The sensory information from the body while it is moving, it gets information about that movement, but it also gets feedback from the environment. When I take this jump with that strength to actually make it, right? It's constantly about feedback. And so Marty had his feedback as he is walking on the beam. He has his tactile feedback. He has his proprioceptive feedback. He has his vestibular feedback. Of course, he also has visual feedback. He has all of it. I'm not blindfolding the dogs. I'm not putting earplugs in their ears. So they constantly have all the information. But the exercises, the sensory integration exercises, are designed so that the dog needs to use and reach out to get specific information to be able to do a certain movement. For him to be able to stand on that beam and remain on that beam while things are moving past him in the environment, he learned that it helped him if he reached out to feel the edges of the beam. He learned that using that tactile information helped him to create the right contractions in his body so that he could remain on the beam, so that he could keep his balance.
Mhm.
So that's an example of the exercise, stay on the beam. For that to do, he needs to grab the right type of information. That means that he's paying attention to it. That means that he is directing his concentration and his focus towards, this is my body, I can feel it, and I take reference with what I feel, the edges of the beam, and then I can see what goes on around in my environment. Now that's a whole different thing from I don't know where I stand and something grabs my attention and I'm moving wherever my attention pulls me, or whatever pulls
Mhm.
my attention.
Or if we are cueing them constantly, right, then it's also not, that sensory motor loop is built differently than within sensory integration.
Yes, because it becomes obedience. Nothing wrong with obedience. Everything has its place. But when we think about how the brain develops, he needs to feel that he needs this information. I want them to consciously reach for some information and feel that they need it. It's a whole different circuit in the brain if we do it in that direction. Thought of something I want to say about it, but I just lost it.
Mm, That's a really interesting concept that you're basically are you providing space and objects for them to engage with so that they can derive what am I trying to say? That they can derive sensory input from? Is that what you're providing in sensory integration?
So there is something like sensory gardens where you can have your dog go to, or you can go with your dog, obviously, and your dog can experience, and people will have put in effort to make different sensory enrichment. But it is not sensory integration. Exercises is not about free sensory enrichment. I will make my assessment of the dog. I will see how the dog filters or doesn't. And this is where my part becomes really important, because I will assess the dog. I need to understand how his sensory processing happens and what impulses or what sensory channels he finds difficult to process. Now, if I would just let him run free in a sensory garden, as much fun as that could be, he would not go and look for, oh, what do I find difficult and how can I push there a bit so
How
that I
can I grow new brain cells?
yes, exactly. So my task as, the therapist at that point is to push him just enough where it gets difficult and make sure that the difficulty lies in the fact that he needs to use certain information in a specific way, and reach out for that information. That is actually what I'm doing when I'm giving sensory integration exercises.
That sounds like a lot. That sounds like you actually have to know a lot of things to put that together.
It helps. It helps. The main thing is constantly reading the dog. The most important thing to be able to do that is constantly understanding how the dog is processing.
Mhm.
And while I'm interacting with a dog, when I'm getting it right, obviously it is changing within an exercise. So my role is constantly changing as the dog is progressing. I need to constantly make sure that we keep pushing that edge, and I keep pushing the dog further so that his skills develop further and further. His skills of self-regulation, his skills of balancing his body, his skills of arousal management, and so on.
So, are you saying that with sensory integration, they can there can be a behavior change?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was really small with Marty. It was although very important for me in my life at that
Mhm.
point, having him stand still while I'm toweling him off, that was huge, because you can't imagine how this dog was bouncing up and down, and it happened on a daily basis. And to then see him in exactly the same situation stand perfectly still, for me, that was huge. Okay. But okay, let's say all in all, it's not such a big difference to towel a dog off and have him stand still. But when I speak to clients who say, like, oh, okay, my dog is constantly humping visitors, he's humping the pillows, he's jumping on the kitchen counter, he's he's barking every evening, like he's biting and destroying the furniture, to after 2-3 sessions, the people coming back and telling me, like, yeah, we just had a Christmas evening, and we had the whole family over, and he hasn't been humping anyone. Now that's important.
Wow.
Now that's an important change, because for me the important change is, it's a huge change for how the dog has perceived all the commotion around him during that Christmas evening, right?
How does that change happen, else, with through sensory integration? What changes?
Well, I think what is really very important is that we're able to stop the chaos of all the sensory information that is bombarding them, and bring some structure, even if it just starts with, it's it's not you. There is you and there is not you. When we are stressed, what happens is, let's say you've had a very stressful day at work. The reason why it is stressful and why you might be extremely nervous and feel maybe anxious is because you have perceived all the difficulties around you and all the noise and all the whatever, as you haven't perceived it as a distance from you.
Mm.
It has overwhelmed you, right? Of being overwhelmed is literally when you don't experience a distance between this is me and that is not me. Now, if you have that constantly going on because your sensory perception is all a big chaos, and you have no references in all the sensory information that comes to you, and you have no clear structure, well, that's what we can bring with sensory integration. We can structure the information that comes to you. Why? Because we help the dogs to be, first of all, aware of body, concentrate on your body. Marty concentrated on his body because he was feeling. He was feeling
Mm-hmm.
walking. He was feeling how he was walking. He was feeling that he was out of balance and wanted to put himself back into balance. So that information of you, of your own body, became, for Marty, became more important because he was doing those exercises on the beam. So that's the main thing. This is definitely where very often it starts for dogs, and when I'm working with dogs, is feel that distinction between the you and the not you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty huge. I mean, that's almost like philosophical change in a dog.
I think that is why we meditate, why we do yoga, do tai chi. It's all it, or after a stressful day, you go to the gym. What do
Yes,
you do when you go to the gym? You work with your body, right?
it's
You train your
self-regulating, isn't
body in
it?
many different exercises.
Yeah. Um, we are going to talk so much more about this, I think, if
Mhm.
you are willing to entertain my questions. But so we're actually trying to bring you to the United States next year.
Yeah, that would be great.
We already have a place, and it's near Gainesville, Florida. And tell us a little bit about the certification for sensory integration practitioners. Who would you like to see take your course?
Okay. Well, I think, well, what I would like to do is that people who are already working with dogs as behaviorists or physios, they could have, of course, take the most out of this course because they could use this in their behavioral therapies. They could use it in their physio practices, and most dogs would benefit from it if it reaches those people. So that would be great. Um,
How long is the course?
so first of all, there's an online theory, which I've been told is relatively difficult. But I'll be there to help everybody through it. Um, we will have many opportunities to have everything explained again and again. I'm really keen on explaining as much as needed. And then we have the practical sessions, which are difficult. Why? Because I see that for most dog trainers, it's they need a mind switch. They need to switch from telling the dog what to do or expecting a specific outcome to, first of all, not telling the dog what to do, uh, not with cues, not with auditory cues for the dog, but by communicating only with your body language. That's a very important one. And when I start an exercise, I'm not looking, see, when I start a dog and I have a plank in the as the only equipment, my goal is not to get the dog on the plank. The plank is there only as a tool to start a communication with the dog, to use my body language, to use the dog's body language, and see how we interact. And I don't have the goal when I start doing exercises, I don't have the goal that the dog needs to be on the plank, but I will have the goal that the dog needs to be aware of his position.
Mhm.
And that's quite often for trainers, especially when you have been in the obedience world, training in the obedience world. You want to sit It's not oh, I want to see how the dog will understand my body language and communicate with me so that maybe eventually we get a sit or maybe we get a lie down. We don't know. But that's how I work in sensory integration. I'm going to communicate with the dog, and my goal is be aware of how you move your body. Be aware of where and how you can place your paws. And maybe that will get us to you walking on the plank. But maybe I will, by doing that exercise, by doing that interaction with you, see that we are first going to do something else, that you don't need to get your forepaws on it, that we make a different communication. So that is often something that takes a bit of time to change the mindset of the trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it's difficult to explain, but it's a different way of being together with the dog. First of all, I'm going to establish our language together, and it's going to be through body language. I don't speak. And if I do speak, even in workshops in different countries where they speak different languages, my mother tongue is Dutch or Flemish. And wherever I go, when I find that I do need to use my voice, I'm going to speak in Flemish. Okay, so the importance is just going to be about the sounds that the dog hears, and my intonation, and how I use my vocal presence. Okay.
Is that because you don't want them to you off words necessarily and go by these repeat like reflexes that they already know in response to different words, or are you trying to establish a totally different not relationship, but communication with their nervous system? Or
When I use my voice, I use it in a prosodic way. I want to use it in a way that will have an influence on their autonomic nervous system. I want to have an influence towards their social engagement. So these are ideas
Mhm.
that definitely also are supported by the polyvagal theory, by Stephen Porges' ideas about social engagement, and about how sounds have a specific effect on the autonomic nervous system. I also use it for me. I can use my voice for me. When I start using my voice, I also help to put myself in a specific mindset, in a specific feeling, and in a specific
Right.
interaction. Or I might use my voice, create sounds, because I need to create some white noise while the dog is exploring the environment. So I do use sound and I do use my voice. But usually, while I'm working with a dog, I won't use it to say good boy, well done, not anything that is recognizable for the dog. But what should be recognizable for the dog is my intentions, my mindset, the fact that I am functioning in my social engagement, because that should create through neuroception in the dog, that should create some sense of safety, some sense of trust, maybe even. But in
Right.
general, I'm not using my voice. Most of the time, I'm not speaking to dogs. I'm speaking a lot, but not through my voice. I'm using body language, because that's the main language of dogs. It's body language. So
Right.
if I use their social engagement language, which is body language, then I'm more likely to put them in their social engagement system instead of their fight flight system.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. And we will talk, maybe we can talk about polyvagal theory in one of the episodes. Is there anything else you want to? I think we're going to wrap it up for today. What would you like to, how do you want to finish this? What do you want the takeaway to be for today? We know you a little bit more, and we know that the course is going to happen next year, but we don't know, we only know like one little, two atoms out of the sensory integration. We only started talking about it. It's such a huge topic and study that we're going to try to break it down into different little digestible pieces in the next months and present it to the audience that is probably not familiar with it yet.
Yeah. So what's most important is that say I can only say what sensory integration has brought me. And I had been working as a behaviorist before I started exploring sensory integration for dogs. But it has made my work as a behaviorist so much richer, and at the same time also simpler in a way, or easier in a way. Although now I can do very complex cases. But the reason that they become easier is because I have that structure of looking at sensory information and seeing the very basic components of behavior. And the most basic components of behavior is, what's the information? What is the information that comes to this guy, and how is it processed? How is it filtered? And how come it leads eventually to that outcome? We have information that comes in, there's a processing, and then there's the outcome. In behavioral therapy, we want to change the outcome. In sensory integration, I'm changing how it is processed. So that brought me advantages to help many more dogs and to help them in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at counter conditioning, we look at, this is the outcome, we want a different outcome. This outcome came from that emotion, which was triggered by that stimulus. But now I'm also looking at this stimulus, before there's even an emotion attached to it, how is it filtered? How is this filtering working? And is that filtering actually okay? Some information might come in way too strong. The filter is just allowing it through much more than anything else, which is, not realistic to the representation of the whole environment. Some information is coming through, but it is very diluted, extremely diluted. Well, that's not realistic either. So I have to change that filter so that eventually in the middle, we get a correct representation of reality around us and within us. And with sensory integration, that's what I'm doing with the exercises. So it comes before counter conditioning, because the filter is before the counter conditioning. And obviously, it will have an effect on the outcome. So with sensory integration, in my behavioral therapy, I have gained such an important and really big tool where I can help the dogs that had a difficult behavior, not because of an emotion that is attached. And we have that so often that we cannot say, like, okay, that behavior, that only came about because once there was this trigger and it had that emotional effect, and because of that, it had this outcome. Many people can't, many of my clients can't say that, well, once that thing happened and from then on, all those things went wrong.
Right.
Very often that's not the case. Very often that is not the case. So it's looking at, okay, how is this filter functioning for you? How do you put it all together? Is everything getting the right place? Is the puzzle matching as the representation of the actual world around you and within you? And then we can change behavior. But then behavior changes. If you had a
It just happens. It's much more organic.
Yes, like the people that come back to me after 2-3 sessions and say, my dog is not humping anymore, or my dog is not lunging to other dogs anymore. We have not counter-conditioned any dogs. We have not counter-conditioned or done some training to not hump or not jump up the kitchen counter anymore. But he's not doing it anymore. Right? It's because we've changed some other things. We've changed how the dog is perceiving everything.
Yeah, and we look at that what sensory information is actually coming to the dog and what is taking too much space in the dog's brain, right? What is too loud? What is too dim? So maybe that's what we're going to talk about next time, about all the sensory channels. And I think that's a great hook for the next time.
Good.
We have more than 5 senses, by the way.
Teaser.
Were you taught in school about 5 senses, or were you taught about more? 5, right?
1 out of 5, yeah. Yeah.
I believe that they might still be teaching that.
I think so too.
Right.
I think so too.
Well, we're going to reveal some secret senses. Spoiler alert. Thank you, Els. You have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Lovely afternoon.